Yeah, I'm starting to record now. Get the live stream, get ready to go here. There we go. All right. All right. Yeah, looks like us four. I guess it was a bridge too far to get up for 4th of July when you're off from work and
I I think people start rolling in when the clock
yeah,
Usually,
starts
yeah, closer at right at night.
yeah.
sweeping around.
Did you already go to Starbucks this morning?
Did I?
Ooh.
Yes.
There's Luke.
Wow.
Luke was having a field day in the chat yesterday.
Yeah, I wasn't monitoring the chat because I was on a mobile location.
Hey, Luke.
Good
Long time
morning,
no
Luke.
see. Well, good evening.
Yeah, good evening.
You look tired.
It's already almost I've got 3 more hours and then it's over and there's no fireworks.
No
What's the
fireworks in China?
I was going to say China celebrates.
what
No,
is
they don't, not yet.
does China celebrate
Huh?
like the first day? Does China celebrate like the first day like the end of the Warring States? Or do they celebrate like the communist takeover? What's their Independence Day?
Their Independence Day is October 1st. It is it's just the Independence Day, or I guess the beginning of the new CCP, the Chinese, the new China.
Okay.
And then we have this spring week, kind of like Japan. Japan has a week of just they call it Golden Week in Japan, but we have a Golden Week as well because we have the mid autumn festival going on at the same time. So I'll probably be flying back to America for Sing Family then. So
Oh, nice.
because it's the
I'm
cheapest
gonna
time to go.
I'm gonna free flow right now. All right, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to Step into Cafe Americana. We like to thank you, all 100,000 of you, for stepping into Cafe Americana. And I would like to thank my co-hosts Andres Dobriensky and Michael Shaw for coming on board. And today's topics are free falling. We could do whatever we want. We're going to talk about the big, beautiful bill and the Republicans and Mike Johnson getting that through so quickly without reading it, and and then talk about Trump's wins, and let's just free form talk about being an American, the 4th of July. We'll just open it up. No real formalities here. So I'll just say, I'll start off by saying, yeah, Dean's coming in. I'll just start off by saying, we had been talking about how Trump wasn't getting anything done for several months, and he's had a pretty big month, I would say, in getting things done, whether you agree with what he's got done or not. I mean, if we go down the checklist, nobody's coming into the country illegally, or very few. And now we're getting this bill through, and so he got his legislation through, good or bad. He bombed the Iran nuclear sites, so he's doing something. So that's where I will say, I this is what I voted for. Now, whether we agree on the actual bill. I know for me personally, especially in this beginning of the bill, I'm gonna be fine. It's gonna do one, I'm in that perfect range where it's gonna economically be fine for me. So I don't know how it's gonna affect our other friends here, but I would just say that, you can't say that he's not doing anything anymore. So I'll pass it off to Andres.
A little more disappointed today than my good friend, the honorable professor. But and we'll get into America later. But if we want to catch up on the bill, a lot of things that I don't think people voted for, because I don't think that people voted for their personal costs, and this is people at the 50,000 and below income level. I don't think people voted on their cost of living going up. And for those on Medicaid specifically, this bill looks to save $500 billion on the backs of people who get Medicaid. And those are people who are at the 138. Well, it was people at the 138% of the federal poverty level. That's been rolled back. And 138% is basically $20,000 for an individual. So those are the backs of the people. We're taking away things, but we're not giving them anything. And that's why I think there was a certain level of this population that said, hell no, I'm tired of prices going up. I don't know, what else to do. And it seems that I don't know what the plan is for life to get better for a lot of those people under this bill, given that, yes, there is no tax on tips, but they capped it on 25,000, and that'll expire in 3 years anyway. They made the tax cuts for the rich permanent, but they didn't make tax cuts on tips permanent or tax cuts on overtime permanent. So there are things that are in there that may look and sound good, but in the end, again, $500 billion off of people who now do Medicaid. And if you want to talk about people who work or not work, for years, it's been pretty steady at 2/3 of the people on Medicaid have jobs. This is just going to put either kick people off, or it's going to make it just annoying with government bureaucracy. Like, I have to submit this, I have to do that. Again, you're probably working 2 jobs anyway. If you're at that poverty level, you might have a kid or something else. I don't think this is what those people signed up for. So it's going to be interesting in my mind, Kenny. I keep looking back to what happened in 2008, 2009. The Republicans were looking for a message after they lost the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And they were going around, they're like, maybe we're going to be more Latino. Maybe we're going to do this. Maybe we're going to change our message. And all of a sudden, the ACA passed. And what happened? Those town halls in August exploded with a thing called the Tea Party. And I think that Democrats should, instead of trying to figure out what their thing is, put their heads together. I think they should listen to, if there is an outrage, who is outraged about this at the town halls, and what are those messages? And that'll be probably a more effective campaign slogan than anything they can come up with themselves.
I agree. I think this is double-edged sword for Trump, in the sense that now you just gave, the Dems didn't really have a message or a unifying message, and now you might have gave them one. So it'll be very interesting. And like I said, my weakest point for Republicans is how they're terrible at messaging. Mike?
I think I go back to kind of find clues of where this came from and why. Obviously, the election, but also there was a general sense of understanding, I think, across left and right, that America is not healthy, that we're not headed in the right area. And in a good grief, 5, 6 years ago, the Fed started, like, they carried no more than $1 trillion, sub-trillion dollars on the books. And that exploded to like 9 times, like with COVID and things like that. It's a little bit more complicated than that. But I think Donald Trump was elected to fix the patient, get us in a better state. I think that explains why there's a little bit of medicine with this big beautiful bill. It's the first serious cut to the welfare state or entitlement programs in generations, really. That has to happen. It's gonna hurt a little bit, but we got to take our medicine. But I was also going to say too, there's also stuff in there for defense, for immigration. For once, we're actually getting serious on the immigration on the border. The border wall will be finished. There's like $350 or $350 billion earmarked for that. I think a lot of the memes were going around where ICE ones were like how much more its budget is. Well, you got to fund something if you want to get serious about it. There's also things in there for missile defense, Golden Dome. There's even stuff in there for the Mars Artemis mission,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
some other things. And the other thing too I wanted to say is that nobody's talking about and nobody will talk about is this goes along with taking the medicine, which is my theory of the case. The EVs and the solar subsidies gone. Matter of fact, there's actually a $250 charge for having an EV vehicle, I believe annually or during the process of the purchase. I'm not
Yeah.
whatever. But I think the point is that if you want to have a healthy, for example, a healthy EV market, you cannot have any of these subsidies. You have to make it market healthy. And we have not had a healthy green economy or market um, from the get-go, whether it was Obama and the kerfluffle over this solar power and whatnot, or it's all given all these subsidies to incentivize the marketplace to do that. I think what you're going to see in the next 10 years, yes, there are cuts here and there are cuts there, but there are also things that will make life a lot better over the longer term, which will make our economic markets a lot healthier than the other world. Like whereas in 10 years, China will be flooded with their own EVs, India will be flooded with their own, Europe probably too. They're still going to be hooked on that subsidy. And the quicker that you can get off that, just as an example, and you can just have the market just buying a car because it's a car, and maybe you go the EV, maybe you go for the an ICE, internal combustion engine. You know, I don't want to get too dialed out here, but yes, again, big. If you take the totality of the bill, people do not like the big, big legislation, big bills. They didn't like the ACA. They didn't like the big. They don't like the bigness of it, but it's the time, it's part and parcel for the time that we live in. And I would love to have more focused bills, but at the same time, you have these massive sweeping changes, and we've been through a lot over the last 10 years. Never mind Donald Trump being a part of the equation. So I view this as overall positive. I'm glad that it passed. I've said for a long time, hold the line for Trump. I may not understand everything that's going on, but I have faith and trust that this is what I voted for and that he will turn the corner or make the right decision when it comes to it. And overall, I think that that's why I'd be very interested to see how the Democrats take the negative, unpopular aspects of the bill and run with it. Sure, they will, but also at the same time, Donald Trump promised this and that and the other thing, and boy, has he delivered. You made folks out there may disagree, whatever, but I'm very happy with it. And again, I think this goes back to like the theory is that America's got to have to take we got to make some drastic changes in order for us to be viable well into the future. You know, we got to get over 2050, and then if we're in good ground in 2050, we're pretty much going to be fine for the rest of the century. I mean, that's way beyond the scope of today, but I'm very happy with it. I hope that we can be smart and fix some of the things that Medicaid, Medicare, and our hospital systems is a mess. Um, that's not news to anyone, but I like where we're going, and for once in my adult life, voting for a president who I actually had faith in. He didn't lie to me. He told me exactly what he was going to do, and he did it. And I can't be any more happier than how he handled the Iran Israel thing. I got to give. He said we're only going to do this, and we actually only did that. Whereas with anybody else, we would have boots on the ground or some stupid
Yeah.
outlay of like something in 6 months, like where we're just going to be there for the next decade. And I don't like that. So all in all, I'm very happy. Anyway.
Yeah. I think with this Medicaid, I was doing some research. I think under Clinton, they slashed Medicaid like 14% under Clinton. So and this is like 18% slash from what I'm trying to understand here.
Yeah, Andre put
So
it. He like a trillion over 10 years, I think,
yeah.
is what it. Yeah.
So, we're gonna have to see how that plays out. I'm not a big fan of bureaucracy, especially, he's definitely slashed a lot of these administrations that handle this bureaucracy. So it's just gonna be more bureaucracy, and I don't know how that's gonna play out.
And Kenny, you
Yep,
remember what that feeling was like in the end of Clinton? Because yeah, he did all these welfare reforms, work requirements for welfare to
yep,
work,
work fair.
as
Yeah,
well as the Medicaid. And I think that was part of the messaging problem for the Democrats in the 2000 election,
right,
where a third party candidate was the biggest one since Perot. So that's where
right.
Ralph Nader came in because people were like, the Democrats are too corporate. They don't
Yep,
care about the common people. So I think that's a danger for whoever is coming up in the Republican Party after Trump. Like, do you care about us, the common man?
right. I agree, and it's all about that messaging. It
Yeah.
really is. So we're going to start bringing people in. We'll stay on this big, beautiful bill for a little while, but then I really want to just bring people in let's give a 4th of July message, and then we'll end the show at 10. And just to let everybody know, Andreas, Mike, and myself will be continuing this show on Sundays. We're gonna do Sunday morning at what we agree on, guys, 9:30 or 9?
9:30 Eastern, was it?
9:30
9:30.
Eastern time.
Yep, that's perfect. Yeah.
Right. So we'll do 9:30 Eastern time, and we'll kind of compete with the pundits, the legacy media shows that nobody watches anymore. So maybe people will watch us.
We actually, all three of us, we all have talked about our admiration for Tim Russert and Chris
Yeah.
Matthews and like the greats. So hopefully we'll be able to
Chuck
do some.
Todd before he lost his marbles
Chuck Todd before he went insane.
And lost his job.
and lost his job. Yeah. Now you can watch him once a week with Chris Saliza.
Yeah.
And the things Chuck says now is really not the Chuck Todd I knew back in the day, but what are you going to do? Okay, so I'm going to bring Vincent in, and Vincent's going to, there we go. Go ahead, Vincent. Let us know what you think about what's going on.
I don't. We talked about OBB enough, and I'll just say, remind everybody, all politics is local. So when the pundits and the analysts love to generalize and talk about things nationally, you always have to remember that, the blue states are blue states, the red states are red states, and then we have the swing states. And for the Democratic Party to take 7 seats is not that big of a hill to climb. Let's not, I mentioned it yesterday, if Trump was so powerful and had such long uh, coattails, wouldn't the Republican candidate for governor, which President Trump almost won New Jersey, wouldn't the Republican candidate for governor be beating the Democratic candidate for governor? No, the Democratic candidate for governor is up by 21%, and the Democratic candidate for governor in Virginia is up by like 17%. So it's like, you know, people talk about they try to make it like 0 or 1 in the explanation of America 2025. But the bottom line is 56% of the people in this country live paycheck to paycheck. And people that are up, as James Carville and David Axelrod said over and over, the Democratic Party has become a party of upper middle class, white educated voters who are know it alls. And if you're, and I taught, look, I live in this world of upper middle class and one percenters, and I came from poverty, so I don't know. It's as if when you talk to we have very legitimate conversations. All of you and the women and men that are on these calls understand this. But so many people that are upper middle class just have a knee-jerk reaction to what President Trump or MAGA is. The Democratic Party has demonized President Trump and MAGA supporters, and white upper middle class college educated voters in blue states believe MAGA supporters are racist. That's it. I mean, you can't. They've done a. So that's where the Democrats, now to their fault, that's backfired on them. So it's we're more polarized than we've ever been. I hate to keep saying that. I don't see us coming together anytime in the future, and I really see it personally in that. I mean, like I don't want to. I know other veterans, and I know there are people that serve the country, and it's like if you say anything patriotic in your community in a blue state, you're mocked. I posted, I am the son of of a father who was born on the 4th of July, who has an identical twin, and both my father and my uncle, was a colonel. I am a decorated first responder. Anytime I say anything on Facebook about the 4th of July, freedom, Memorial Day, I'm attacked. People are like attacking me. Why are people that are Democrats attacking me in my community? Why? They attack me when I talk about patriotism, and then they say like MAGA and a Trump person. I don't even bring up Trump. I don't say anything about Trump or MAGA. I don't talk about any politics on Facebook.
Well,
And
Vince, it just
and
sounds like,
it's really discouraging to veterans that live in blue states, in these like far left places, and there's something wrong.
well, the country's going to leave them behind if they keep losing national elections. So I'm going to move on to
I
Raleigh
know.
right
Well,
now.
thanks for listening to me. And it's and I've said this before, where there's people that come on two-way and they'll say, we're going to all get together and bring us here. That's not going to happen. I'm just
It's going to take a
I'm not
while.
trying to be pessimistic. I'm a very optimistic person. That's the reason why.
Sorry, Vince, I didn't mean to cut you off like that. I'm sorry. I actually hit the button. We'll let you finish and come put your hand back up later on, and we'll let you come back. And I'm sorry about that, Vince. Hey, Raleigh, you're up, buddy. I asked to unmute you. There you go.
Yeah, I actually think that it's been a great week for Trump. Um, I think that to every voter that's lost first of all, I think people that were on this welfare and really shouldn't have been getting it did not vote for Trump and never would have voted for Trump. And to the extent that probably a lot of them even voted to begin with. And I think there was a lot more resentment on the other side of people like me who were going to work and seeing these people that were sitting at home and getting these social welfare programs. I mean, we all know these people, and they're clearly able-bodied, people. They can go and work, but they've got mental health issues or some BS like that. And I'm not dismissing that. I understand those are problems, but we all have to work, and every one of us has struggles while we work, but we still have to work. Like you don't. That's not an excuse not to work. And I don't get any of these free benefits people talk about. I have to get in my car, go to an office 5 days a week, and yeah, I'm very happy that this bill's passed. It makes the tax cuts permanent, which is also a great thing. A lot of people like these tax cuts, and a lot of hardworking blue collar workers like the fact that they took out the taxes on tips. Um, that's going to go a long ways. And yeah, I mean, I think this has been a great week for Trump. And I think that finally, after 6 months, or almost, yeah, I guess it's been 6 months now, his policies are starting to come together. And, they're starting to get traction for peace in the Middle East. Ukraine still looks like it's a ways off. Sorry, Andre. But, uh, there's peace elsewhere. There's peace in Africa. The other day, I heard that was negotiated in Washington, D.C., or at least by the Americans. And the inflation's down. No, I mean, you don't ever hear the left talk about that, but inflation is down. I won't go on, but I think if you overall, it's just been 6 months, and he's delivered on a lot of. And the immigration thing. Anyway, I won't keep going on. I think that it's been a great time.
Yeah, I just think that like we've talked about in the past, Trump 2.0, much more prepared, coming in as opposed to Trump 1.0. So that's why I had some confidence this time around. The first time around, I had no idea what we were going to get. And, what we got, at least for me, was my pockets were, and my 401k was beautiful until COVID hit. Then we got COVID and everything just went, forget it. So this time around, I knew with President Miller by his side that Trump was gonna be more focused and policy wise more focused. So it's been an interesting time, and we'll see how it continues. I'm glad my good friend Dean from Ohio, who I'm going to see at the end of August at the Football Hall of Fame, is going to come in and let us know what's going on, Dean.
Hey, how you doing? Yeah, football season is here again, and I I think I mentioned or talked in previous shows about being a little bit distraught over what Vincent is talking about. The fact that Gallup polls are showing that patriotism overall is at a low, but especially if you identify as left leaning or on the left side of the aisle, it's extremely low. And I think what Vincent says is very true. That not only do they feel unpatriotic, or they don't feel a sense of just undying love for the country, they beat the snot verbally out of folks that show any sign of actual patriotism or love for the country. And we are at 249. We're 249 years in. We are starting our 250th year as a country. I'm just amazed. I remember the bicentennial, 1976. Remember all the coins. Remember all the just 200 years. And I remember as a kid thinking, "Damn, that is so long. I cannot believe the country has been around for 200 years." And now I'm I'm north of 50, and looking back thinking I have been around for, what is it, 1/5 of the time the nation has been around. It just seems unfathomable that that's the case. But for this year, and especially for our 250th birthday coming up, I want to have fun. I'm going to celebrate. I got going over to mom's. We're going to have good family fun. We're not going to squander this one. However, I think it's important to have a focus, knowing what we know from that Gallup poll, from what Vincent says, from our own experiences, that it's important to start to make the case that the country belongs to everyone, and everyone should be proud of the country in spite of flaws. Somehow patriotism has been equated to blind allegiance to the worst parts of our history. And it doesn't have to be that. We can be a growing, learning, excellent, outstanding country with exceptionalism and still have flaws. In fact, I think we're better for the flaws, and I wish we wouldn't flagellate ourselves so much over it, but I understand it. We don't have to. I think one of the main arguments we can make is, look, yeah, we've got flaws, and I'm very proud of the country. It's not an either or sort of proposition that people have to accept. I think second is that the country itself, we need to come back to our shared identity, the community of the country. Look, people are coming to this place. They're coming to the United States. because of its greatness, not because of its problems. And bringing people into that community in a normal fashion, not illegal immigration, but in a normal, what used to be normative, I think is very important. And Little Italy and your Irish heritage and my Polish heritage, and you bring that in as a part of this melting pot. You don't discard everything. You don't discard the country and everything that people have fought for and over our very short history. We've got to be able to come together. So my hope is through this. I don't know what the name of your show is, Professor, but
Cafe
through the
Americana.
Cafe, perfect. Oh, that's perfect. For the next 50 plus weeks, I hope a portion of this is getting the country ready for its 250th birthday, whether through education or just listening to others that have grievances and say yes, and yes, that is important to deal with, and we're in a great country to be able to deal with it.
That's great, Dean. Before I call on Duke and Luke, the one thing I'll say about with this immigration thing, I really think, and we've talked about this, I think we need to get some kind of immigration reform passed. We're going to have to give asylum to people out of here because you can't deport, 11 million people. I know they keep saying 20 million illegals. It's 11.1 from what I could tell. But you got to figure out how to put these people on the payroll, give them paperwork and get them to work. And that would be a very courageous thing for the Republicans and the Democrats to get together on a bipartisan bill to try and resolve this issue. But here's one other point I'm going to bring on, and I'm going to bring on Duke, unless Andres and Mike want to comment.
I'm chomping at the bit a little, so sure.
Yeah, okay, good. I have a big problem. One of the biggest problems I see with immigration in the 20th century or 21st century, I should say, is the lack of assimilation to being an American. People come in and they don't want to speak the language, and I'm all about religious freedom and stuff, but this country was built on people coming here, immigrants coming here and opening businesses and sending their sons to war for America. And we don't have that anymore. We don't have this assimilation where you want to be an American. Like Dean's right. People come here because this country's great. It's not because this country sucks, right? But then you come here and then you don't want to, I run into too many immigrants who don't want to speak the language. They want to get the benefits of the country, but they don't want to be Americans. It's okay if you come from another country and you say, "Hey, I'm from Poland. I'm born from Poland, but I'm an American." That's great. That's great, but we don't get that anymore, and I think that's part of the immigration problem. Go ahead, Andres.
Yeah, well, about that, I would say, I give talks about what the difference about what this word is diaspora, which is, citizens, but they have roots, as opposed to what happened really. Uh, boat travel changed that a little bit. The better it was at the beginning of the 20th century. So really, it's pre 20th century where people were like, "I'm just not going back." There was still some of that at the beginning of the 20th century, but once the air travel came in, that really changed the game for Western Hemisphere people coming from Europe or other places because you were just not going back. That was it.
Right.
And you found your roots. You were able to form societies, brotherhoods, to keep your heritage. People founded churches with their home community, whether you're Italian, Polish, Ukrainian, etc. But that's really changed because of that, and it is a problem for those who really cherish that tradition. As anybody offers me a new idea, and I was like, well, in 1905, somebody came up with this idea. How about we try that first? But I want to talk about patriotism a little bit. Obviously, I'm a huge, as a son of an immigrant, there's no reason other than that for my huge love of Americana. at the by the age of 16, I had 16 Elvis CDs for
Is
no
it me?
reason.
Hold on one second, Andres. Hold on. Is Andres' mic volume going down, or is that just me?
Hold on, let me see if I'm on the right mic. Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
There you go. That's better.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so Americana is great. So obviously, I love this country so much. There are other people I talk to, including veterans, who do have a problem with what's happening in this country, and that's part of the patriotism thing. I would say it's we could say the same thing about what happened under Biden. People probably said that they don't like the examples of patriotism under Biden, and they felt removed. And I feel the same thing is happening now. I feel that if you want to say that we're not honoring our that we're finally honoring our past, well, you can't see a single portrait of a former Joint Chiefs of Staff in the Pentagon. They've all been taken down. They've wiped clean websites and historical exhibits. They don't like what's there, and it's only what the government from the top down, really. I don't think that's ever happened in the United States, that the White House dictates what's happening in our Smithsonian museums. There's a certain point where there are people who are questioning what's happening in this country, including we've had long discussions about the deployment of troops on American soil to do peacekeeping. That is something that we haven't had before in this kind of in the 21st century, especially. And then lastly, it's where our priorities lie. I mentioned the Medicaid stuff, but uh, it's clear that there are certain laws that aren't being followed by the government anymore. One example is TikTok. Sure, he's delaying that. He's delaying that. That's a law that was bipartisan, and we're just not honoring the fact that we're supposed to sell TikTok. It's just not happening. The other thing that's not happening is asylum laws. It's a bipartisan bill signed by President. We accept asylums. You'll deal with it in terms of federal judge. Now we know there's a backlog and that we need more federal judges. We need to be able to process these people sooner. But it's just federal law that you're able to step on this soil as all asylum seekers have always been able to do and ask for asylum. And we're not doing that. So there's part of the thing that we can say is being ignored or we're wiping away, and that's on both sides of the aisle. I feel that, I feel like voters or Americans on both sides of the aisle feel that way depending on who's in power. But I agree with everybody that all we need to be doing is trying to get ourselves closer. And I endorse, as a huge proponent of America 250, I very much endorse us focusing on that throughout the next 50 weeks. Thanks for saying that, Dean.
Right, Michael?
Yeah, I don't disagree, and I can't really objectively refute some of the things that Andre laid out, and there are very true. It is very, very true that we're going in, and the executive branch is going in and strong arming and reining in some of the historical things. Now, some of those were malicious compliance, where they took down something that was obviously part of it. Everybody would agree that it's American history, but I think that's a natural reaction to so just some of the anti-American things that have occurred over the last several years. Unfortunately, that is tinged with Trumpism and MAGA, and that divide of like whether you wave an American flag or whose side you're on, or what all this like the not healthy or good by and large for us. But I would push back a little bit, and I would say the people who are here legally who do go through the process, who do go through that multi-year process, and they check in and they do everything and they pay their taxes and they keep their nose clean. And all those people do, I think more of them come through with an appreciation and a love of this country like we want to see from people. Now, the people who are here illegally, who just kind of flew over the border or across the border, I don't think they have that appreciation. And rightly so, they should be expelled. Not everybody everywhere, but the vast majority. If you didn't come and play by the rules, and be honorable about it, you can get out. I think is the temperature that we're at currently. But at the same time, too, America is always evolving. We're figuring it out. There's a lot of things that are not right. I agree. Maybe that could be handled better. But I go back to like the election in 2024 was just as much about a correction and direction, right track, wrong track, as it was for anything else. Pick your cultural moment, pick your whatever. I think that we have a long way to go, obviously, but I know that in the younger in the younger veterans that are coming up, they have an appreciation of what war and violence and when it should be used, than I would. I would be a lot more cavalier about what we do, whereas the younger generation is a lot more mindful of what we do and what we don't do as far as it goes and what it actually means. And that is because both parties, before Trump, landed us into the quagmire after mistake, and it got on people's nerves, and to the point to like where we have the situation that we have today. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom, and I'm not saying that it is, but I hope that the next Trump is obviously not afraid of tackling big, heavy issues. Is he going to have the political capital to grab, immigration and do asylum and do some kind of a legal path for the DACA kids and the DACA people who are out there through no fault of their own, and they don't speak Spanish or they don't speak wherever they came from. They are essentially American. So I would like to see those folks recognized as American citizens, but it just takes time, and nothing is perfect. But I do think that we're seeing a big correction, and we needed it. Do I agree with everything, taking down every little thing and this or that? No. But at the same time, you also have to recognize there was a massive, massive overgrowth of certain things in our culture that just got too big. You got just the LGBTQ like everywhere, that encroached on things, and to distract away from the main point of that. And that's a bigger issue or whatever. But I just highlight that and single that out as like one. So people don't want to see that. They want to see an American flag. They don't want to see a thing in their face. They just want to be left alone and go about their business. And I think that's where we're at. I think we're getting there to that
Yeah.
point.
I'm
And
going to bring Duke in. Duke, talk about whatever you want to talk about, but also tell us what how you feel about being an American on this 4th of July and what your wishes are.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Happy 4th of July. Um, Proud to be American. Son of a retired uh, Air Force enlisted person. So I grew up in the military, um, and just contributed a grandson to the Navy. So as some of you all know. Um, so yeah, I'm very, very, very proud. Was a Donald Trump voter. Uh, wasn't as excited as some of y'all to vote for him. I made what I thought was the best choice. As far as the big beautiful bill, um, well, I don't think it's going to have a big effect on me. Recently retired, slightly above average 401k. Wife's going to retire here the middle of July. Um, and there were things in the bill I liked and didn't like. I certainly agree with everybody's sentiment is that we have to do something about immigration. Um, and I would be and gosh, I'm kind of disappointed in the Democrats that they didn't go after DACA as part of this big beautiful bill. Um, but I understand that their intent dislike for the current president. Um, I have a new puppy. Decided he wants to get in my lap. Max, get out. But yeah, I just like I said, I just want to tell everybody happy 4th of July. I think this is the best country on earth. We all won the lottery when we were born here. Uh, it you couldn't have been born in a better country. I was actually born in England, from when my dad was in the service, but like I said, I am an American citizen. Um, but happy 4th of July, everybody.
Thanks.
Uh,
Thanks so much, Duke.
it's gonna,
Happy 4th.
gonna be wonderful.
Okay, Luke, who's in China? Go for it, buddy.
That's something that I've been thinking about all day today. Is today is July 4th here in China. And one of the things that always makes me think about being that when I talk to people is they always ask me, "Where are you from?" And I always say, "I'm from America." And it's always you always expect to have this negative feeling from people. You always expect, "Oh, you're the ones who have the war," or "You're the ones with all the guns." And it's always whenever I talk to anybody, they just go, "Oh, that's great." And it makes me think about the example that we as Americans bring to the world is that we bring an example of what could be and should be for the rest of the world. An opportunity for not only having the rights to share our freedoms, the rights to create what we want, and the freedoms to have the wonderful things that we have. A lot of people here in China, they say they're looking for, the car, the house, the family, and I always go, "Oh, you mean the American dream?" And it makes me think, that is what everybody wants, is the American dream. That we've given ourselves the opportunity and we were the first ones to have those dreams come true. And it reminds me of how special it is and reminds me to stay as an example here in China. I am not the only American here, but I am one of the people that people look to. And, as an example, I have to show people this is what an American is. This is who they are, and this is what they expect. And, we get that. I get a little bit emotional about it because it's the opportunity for me to kind of show that, yes, even though China and America have trouble sometimes, that, the Americans are great people. We are loving people. We are caring people. They always mock me or laugh at me when I always say hello to people on the street because they never do that in China. And I feel like that's something that's really important is just to remind ourselves, the importance of being an American and the liberties and the freedoms and the great things that come out of America and the things that are shared across the world, the movies, the food, the TV, all the entertainment. People love it, people want it, and people enjoy it. And so for me, to everybody there in America, I just wish you guys have a great 4th of July. Enjoy the time away from work and be prepared. Hopefully, now that we have this big, beautiful bill gone, we can start to get together as a country and work on some real issues that are really hurting America, and we'll make it a better place in the future. So, God bless and good luck.
Thanks for coming on, Luke. Appreciate it. Um, Jen, I asked you to unmute. There you go.
All right. Good. Excuse me. Good morning, everybody. Happy Independence Day. I graduated high school on the bicentennial in 1976. So, oh boy, 50 years ago. Woohoo! Anyway, the older I get, and you just can't stop that time because we all do get older. The more you look at the world and you think, the more things change, the more they stay the same, or the fact that there's nothing new under the sun, etc. I've always loved being an American, and I think one of the great things that I've been able to experience in my life is that I have lived overseas. And we lived overseas in Europe during the Vietnam War, where Americans in many countries were extremely unpopular. So, I've seen the backlash from people who didn't like Americans and then those who loved Americans. And then I also lived in North Africa for a little while and saw the world in a third world country, which is also very eye-opening as an American. And so I'm very, very not just proud to be an American, but very, very blessed and glad that I'm an American because I've seen some of the alternatives. I want to say the thing that has concerned me most in the last, well, it's at least 10 years, I guess, maybe a little longer. We've always had a two-party system, and a lot of that was just part of I think, our American competitive nature. So it's like, there's been kind of I don't want to say a war between Americans and Republicans forever, but, let's just say very, very, very healthy competition between the two, since, the days we began as a country. And, it was all pretty good. What concerns me most is in the last, like I said, I don't know how many years, this idea of canceling and doxing and swatting and all the other things. It's almost like it's become a cultural imperative to do harm. Now, there's been a lot of people forever who've chosen to do harm. There's no question about that. But it was never really a cultural imperative before, and it was never culturally acceptable before. And that's the kind of thing that concerns me about the next 50 years. Is this trend going to continue? Or are we going to be able to get back to the place where it is what I'll call a healthy competition? I mean, there's been no love lost between, people on the right and the left for forever. That's nothing new. But the idea that you want harm to come to the others.
I think that's a great point, Jen,
Yeah.
because we are at that point. You could see even in our little debates we have either in the chats or when we're on the post shows, when we're in America's Talk Show and then we're offline, how we can really get at each other totally unnecessarily,
Yeah.
because we all want the same thing in the end. We just don't agree about how to get there. But to
Right.
be to want to hurt ourselves over it is really not American, and it's a shame. And we are way too divided,
Yeah.
too far left, too far right, and we overcorrect every time at every election. It's an overcorrection that upsets the other side.
Yeah.
And we need to figure out how we're going to get more centrist. I'm always willing to come. I'm always willing to let me, I'm a Republican, but I'm willing to always listen to the other side and see how we can come to a compromise. And
Yeah.
I wish we would have more of that in this country. So I'm gonna bring on. We got Aaron and Dan. Let's keep going. It's 9:51. I don't want to. Is Raul doing his show? Do we know? Because if he is, I don't want to run over too late. So, Aaron, you come on, and then we got Dan Olivo. I want to hear from Dan too.
Hey guys, how's
Hey,
it
Aaron.
going? Happy Fourth. Um, yeah, I mean, I think Dean and others brought up these issues about what it is to be sort of the concept of patriotism, which is a complex topic in our history, right? You go all the way back to the Tocqueville, you go back to our different histories as we were different regions. There's a great book, which is Colin Woodward's American Nations. And he really sort of breaks down how people in different regions took on Americanness, what that meant. Now, I would say by the 20th century, World War One, especially, that started to mean something, fairly radically differently, and we became much more, and definitely, obviously, by World War II, for the most part. We've been challenged, I think, in the last 60, 70 years to try to integrate ourselves fully, and what that means to be sort of fully American. And I think right now, obviously, whether it's what's going on in immigration or what's going on in politics, people question that. So when we wonder why some people on the left might question that, well, if they're questioning the approach that we have, let's say, with immigration, then that's going to make them believe that, well, the definition of American is is changing, and patriotic is changing. And so, do I think that's just a phase? Probably, because I don't think having this type of enforcement regime is sustainable for 5, 10, 15 years. Just Americans don't do long anything. It doesn't matter what it is. That's why we cancel TV shows that are really good. Like, we just don't do things that are long. So there's a window here where you can have, this degree of enforcement, but after that, things are going to have to settle down to something that most people are tolerable with. So my sense is that ultimately, you're not going to get this sort of American patriotism that people sort of define until you get a different set of political figures in American politics that are more unifying figures. And also, to be blunt, I think, Mike and I are the only veterans, and you, Jimmy, that are kind of, and this is a right-centric show, and we're typically the only three people who are veterans ever on here, which speaks that even in the hard-coded right world, it's 5, 10, 20% of people at most. So we've turned patriotism into sort of a social cultural construct, not what it used to mean, which is you literally served your country. That was its kind of core definition. So now it's turned into something cultural. And I think once it turns into something cultural, then it's open for interpretation at that point. And then people can just make up whatever the hell they think it should be. And then that's, I think, where there's a lot of friction now between what people define as patriotic or not.
So, Aaron, let me interrupt real quick. So, what do you hope for this country, in the immediate future? And let's say, things aren't sustainable, but what do you hope for, like, in the next 10, 15 years?
I mean, look, the United States is one of these weird stocks. Like, you need to always go long and either not look at it and just let it grow, or if you're going to be trading it in and out, you need to accept it's going to have a lot of short-term volatility. So the U.S. is, often just an incredibly volatile place in the short term, but we lean long as a growth society and economy. And so in the end, we have to be growing, right? Like any type of like entropy for us is death. So it's just structurally, we have to be going forward with growth and the belief of our own prosperity, because that's really the brand. And we go through these periods where we become internalized, like we are right now, and populist. Those don't last, more than 5 or 10 years. They're unsustainable, basically, because people care more about growth and gaining, wealth and achieving things than they do about almost any other sort of cultural attribute structurally. Like, I'm not saying there aren't 5 or 10 or 20% that care more about those cultural things on the left and the right, but it's nothing compared to the 60, 70% of us that, we want to make more money. We want our kids to do better. We want people to own homes. We want to own homes. I mean, it's just, you're like, that tidal wave is unstoppable. So right now we're in a set of politics where, that's kind of choppy, and, but eventually it won't be.
Okay, listen,
long term, I'm hopeful.
Yeah,
short
go ahead,
term, I think
finish
it's
up,
a train
finish up.
wreck. So I think in the long term, it's hopeful. Always short term, it's a complete mess because we've gone to extreme partisanship now. And when you're extremely partisan, you're stuck on time. You wait, you just waste time. You just cycle.
Yeah.
And that's where we are right now.
Okay. All right. I'm going to bring Dan Olivo in. Go ahead, Dan.
Morning, guys. Happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th, Dan.
I love my country, but I'm not proud of it right now. I'm, in fact, embarrassed. My dad passed away in 2015. He was born in Chicago, but as a youth, as an infant, moved back to Italy for 40 years. As a child, he was forced to march in Mussolini's Little Wolves. So my father understood what fascism is. As Trump started to emerge, talking politically around the time before my dad passed, he warned me about a guy like that. And everything that my dad described, I'm seeing today. So I, as an American, will oppose everything that this guy does, because I never, after he's long gone, want to see somebody rise to power like him again. Yesterday in the afternoon show, our friend, I'm not going to mention her name, but her initials are Ribbon, said that it said Bill Clinton messed up, George Bush messed up. She wasn't a fan of Obama, but Trump came in and told it like it was. I'm going to give you an example of Trump telling it like it was. On 9/11, he went on TV and said that he used to have the second biggest tower in New York City. Now it's the first. That didn't seem very patriotic to me. He went after the Central Park Five, said they should be executed. After they were found innocent, he said, well, they must have done something. He went after our first African American or Black president for birtherism for 2 years straight. He went after John McCain, I believe John Kelly, when he said that he called them suckers and losers. He went after most Mexicans and called them racist, except some, telling it like it is. He said that Mexico would pay for the wall. That never happened. He said he was going to go after the bad hombres. That never happened. Okay? It happened, it happened, but not to the level of that he's going after just day laborers. He said he wasn't going to touch Medicaid. We know that's not true. And lastly, what's most important to me, that he stood in front of an angry mob and said that they should march to the Capitol and he would go with them. He didn't go with them. And I'm not going to go further than that. But so telling it like it is, okay, sure. But I wish everyone a happy 4th of July. And I do love my country, despite all the stuff I said. I don't love what's happening right now.
That's fine, Dan. We appreciate what you bring to the table because we need all of our opinions, and that's great. Anybody want to chime in on like a lightning round of, I'm just going to unmute people and just tell us what you want for the for the future. What do you wish? Raleigh, go ahead.
I mean, I hope we all come together and, we after this bill passes, we start working together to fix this country and make this a better country and stop fighting with everybody.
Good. Next, who did I unmute? Dean, why don't you throw in a couple?
Peace on earth, goodwill toward men. I take a different view than some that it's the line from League of Their Own. Anything good, it's hard, and it's supposed to be hard.
That's right.
It's the hard that makes it great.
Yeah.
And the day-to-day, you can be in the middle of the day-to-day struggles. I get everyone's meaning about, you look too close, you look too, have a sense on the long run. But you know what? If you're not enjoying every day, if you're not finding something every day, and today being the 4th, I hope everyone enjoys time with family or thinking about family and thinking about the last 249 years and how we're going to come together as a nation for this year, 250 for a big bash on the whatever they're calling the 250th.
Great. Alan.
I echo off what Raleigh said. I hope some of the more moderate Dems can come together and start working on what they can work with the Trump administration on. And if the tables turn, I hope there's some moderate Republicans that can do the same thing because if we stop working with the middle, we're just going to keep swinging. Like someone had mentioned, the pendulum is just going to keep swinging. We need the middle to sort of stop that violent swinging back and forth and keep that pendulum like right in the sweet spot so we can continue growing. And 250 years from now they'll be celebrating patriots like Professor Kenny and Andre and Mike and talk about their successful Sunday show in the history books. So that's all I
That's
got.
great. Thanks. Daryl, you walked away from the camera. Can you hear us? I think Daryl's out. So I'm gonna
Well,
Daryl, there you
Yeah.
are. He's
Oh,
got the
baby.
baby. Go ahead. What do you
well,
got for
he
us,
was
Daryl?
crying, so I had
There
to go
you
get
go.
him.
Baby boy.
I wish for the city on a shining hill. That's what I want America to be. Peace. I want us to have a moral authority in the world, and you know, that's what I want. I want America to be the shining city on the hill again.
You got it. And we're gonna let Vincent finish it off before Andres, Mike, and myself give our closing remarks. Go ahead, Vince.
I hope in the future the electoral system has been ruined by the Citizens United on both sides. There's too much money in these congressional and senatorial and gubernatorial elections. It is completely led to unqualified people in Congress from both parties. When I first got to DC in the late 70s, being a United States Senator was a prestigious elder statesman. And I mentioned in the chat, they were much more collegial. Senator Kennedy was friends with Senator Hatch, and they had opposing positions, but we don't have that now. So I hope we can uh, do something about the enormous, the extreme amount of money in politics that it's led to disinformation and of voters, and it's led to podcasters pretending to be journalists who fundamentally don't know anything about American history. And then lastly, I hate to be, the 9/11 guy. I pray and hope every day we do not have another 9/11 or attack on the United States from our enemies. And I pray and hope every day that we will be able to maintain peace with our enemies.
Yep, we all want that. Okay, Andres, why don't you start wrapping it up for us, and then Mike, and then myself.
Thank you for everybody who keeps mentioning that, Ukraine is in my mind. Today is July 4th. July 4th in Ukraine began with the largest missile and drone attack on a European city in over 100 years. It was a pretty bad night. And what I had to deal with multiple interviews is people just asking me why America is cutting and running, because we stopped things that were loaded on the trucks at the Polish border because Pete Hegseth changed his mind for the third time, and we don't know why that is. But in the end, those people are going to do what they need to do, and hopefully America keeps being that shining partner, that ally that everybody can rely on in a foxhole. And so that's going to be the thing on my mind all weekend. But apart from that, I'm going to hope that count my lucky stars that my wife is away at a yoga retreat. So when I eat my hot dogs tonight, she's not going to laugh at me that I have an upset stomach after hot dog number 3. So
I'll interrupt Joey Chestnut. 11 o'clock, bro. That's what America is about.
Yeah.
There you go.
Is
Hey,
he gonna
actually,
do
the
75
blonde.
dogs? Is he gonna do 75 dogs?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Actually,
I
the
don't know.
blonde. I'm gonna unmute you, Jacqueline? Tell everybody what you're looking forward to today, because they just talked
To
about it.
today, of course, is 4th of July, and we launch our first podcast, The Blonde and the Professor.
Right, but talk
What
about what
time?
you're looking forward to eating today.
Oh, hot dogs. Yeah, I'm a bad yogi. I'm a bad yogi. I try to eat vegan, but I jones for a good hot dog.
Yeah,
And
great.
I love Joey from Coney Island. That's great.
Okay, great, babe. All right, Michael.
Yeah, I want everybody to kind of think for a moment about where you were exactly 1 year ago today. It wasn't around any of us today, but today is July 4th, 2025, and I just want us to think about like where we all literally came from nothing, from nowhere, all this whole thing. So the fact that we're doing this on a July 4th is remarkable to me. We have all kinds of people, all different walks of life, all different kinds of opinion. Not We all barely agree on one thing, really, when you get down to it. When you really start hammering on stuff and when it counts. But I would hope that like maybe this time next year, maybe we'll be doing this in person or something like that. I don't know. But I know that we're all strangers. So I want to echo like what it's about is Daryl's little baby boy and his young family. And hopefully, we can do something for Ukraine and help other places and bring peace where there has been none or it's been tough or elusive. But ultimately, I still view, no matter how bad it gets, no matter what's going on, I like you said, the shining city on the hill. To like where if you do, you're gonna get slings and arrows thrown at you or scrapes and scratches or whatever. But hopefully the next day and the next week and the next month it will get better. That's my hope, and I'm very
Yeah.
grateful for all of you, and all the different opinions and views. It may make my blood pressure rise occasionally, which is a good thing too. It's a reminder that you're alive, and God damn it, if you're alive and you're kicking, what more do you want? You know, so.
I agree, Mike. Yeah, I'm gonna give a little shout out to the two-way because that's really what brought us all together. And we'll be back on Monday, back with Mark and Sean and Dan. So they're the glues that keep us together. I know they joke that I'm the glue that keeps the two-way together, but seriously, they're the glue that keeps us together. And it's just been a really wonderful journey. And I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Andres and Mike for doing this with me. For that, and when I asked these guys, they didn't even bat an eye. It didn't take them. Some people like the Crystal Lizards of the world, have to think about it or have scheduling conflicts. But Andres and Mike just immediately agreed, and we're happy to do this. And we're going to continue on Sundays at 9:30 East Coast time. And I just wish I definitely, with Andre, how I feel about Ukraine. I wish we would step up and help Ukraine help themselves. It's really a shame that we're not doing that. Just give them some help. It's just ridiculous what we're doing. So I hope for that, and then I really hope for the future of this country that we start coming to the center, that we stop going too far left, we stop going too far right. Let's get more to the center. Think of the Bill Clinton Newt Gingrich wars and how we kind of centered the country on that, and then let's and I agree with Vince also. No, let's please no attacks on this soil, because God only knows what that would lead to, and God only knows what it would happen here. But we don't want that. And we just want, I always say this, we all bleed red, so we're all kind of that part of humanity. And I'm proud to be an American. I'm proud to be around you people. And I look forward to more interactions with you guys in the future. And look for me and Jackie on the road for our for my book. I met them on the two-way. So we will be seeing everyone. So anyway, thank you, and we're gonna call it a day, and let's go on Raul's show, and later on tonight we got Raleigh's show, and let's keep this communication going. All right, take care, everyone. Happy 4th.
Happy 4th.